Hello students, welcome to Smart Solutions. I am Nikhil and we have started with standard 8th geography chapter number 3, that is agriculture. Okay, so we have completed part 1, that is lecture 1, and in previous class we have seen what is agriculture, what are different activities involved in agriculture, what are primary activities, secondary activities, tertiary activities. Okay, then we saw like what is the arable land, the total arable land on the world or in the world, and basically we saw some definitions like agriculture, sericulture, pisciculture, verticulture, viticulture, horticulture, and so on. Then we went on to understanding farming system and the different processes involved in farming, and then types of farming, the two major classifications, subsistence, commercial. So in subsistence again you have intensive and primitive, and in primitive further it is classified as shifting and nomadic, right? So we have gone through this classification. Also we went through commercial farming and what are different types of commercial farming, right? So we have seen mixed farming and plantation farming. So today in this class, that is lecture 2 of chapter 3 agriculture standard 8. So let us start with major crops. Okay, so if you have not seen lecture 1, so the link is in the description. Go to the link, check out the video, and then probably you can start with this lecture, right? So let us start with today's lecture. So major crops. A large variety of crops are grown to meet the requirements of the growing population. Crops also supply raw material for agro-based industries. Major food crops are wheat, rice, maize, and millets. Jute and cotton are fiber crops. Important beverage crops are tea and coffee. Uh, so as you see over the globe, different crops are grown across different seasons, across different geographies, but there are certain crops which are grown in a huge quantity due to their consumption on a huge quantity, you can say. Some crops are required for industrial purposes, some are required for daily consumption, some are required for making some products like bags, uh, or clothes. So these are basically fiber clothes, right? So let us start with some of the major crops. So first is rice. Rice is the major food crop of the world. So if you see, the most produced crop is rice across the world. It is the stable diet of tropical and subtropical regions. So this is basically a food diet of tropical and subtropical region. So rice needs high temperature, high humidity, and rainfall. So for the cultivation of this rice, we require high temperature, high humidity, and rainfall, right? So the area where there are huge rainfalls, where the climate is humid and the temperature is moderately high, so these are the suitable areas for cultivating rice. So it grows best in alluvial clay soils. So what does it mean? So it means the soil that has the capacity to hold water, basically. So it don't allow easy percolation of water. So the soil of that type, which is alluvial clay soil, so these are the suitable soils, and these are basically water retaining soils, as we discussed. Yeah, right. So China is leading in the production of rice, followed by India, Japan, Sri Lanka, and Egypt. So if you see, this is the geographical the worldwide um, production categorization, you can say. So India basically stands second after China, right? So China is leading, India is following China, and we hope that someday, due to the favorable agricultural practices or any of the reasons, we may increase the production. So followed by India are Japan. So if you see, Japan is an island country, very less land available, but still they are the major producers of rice, and after that is Sri Lanka and Egypt. So in the favorable climatic conditions as in West Bengal and Bangladesh, 2 to 3 crops are grown in a year. So also we have seen that wherever there are favorable conditions and there are sufficient rainfalls, more than one crop can be taken. So the major crop is rice, followed by any of like wheat or any of the oil seed crop, right? So next is wheat. So wheat requires moderate temperature and rainfall during growing season and bright sunshine at the time of harvesting. So if you see, so the wheat grows in a temperature of moderate range. So it also requires moderate rainfall during its growth season, but whenever the plant is completely grown and now it is ready to harvest, so during this time wheat requires bright sunshine, right, so that a proper drying of the crop can be done. So basically three major important things: moderate temperature, moderate rainfall during growth, and bright sunshine during harvesting. Okay, so it thrives best in well drained loamy soils. So the soil requirement for this is one which allows percolation of water, right? So we don't need that water is retained in the field. Wheat is grown extensively in USA, Canada, Argentina, Russia, Ukraine, Australia, and India. And in India, it is grown in winter. Okay. So millet, these are known as coarse grains and can be grown on less fertile and sandy soil. So basically, if you see millets, so these are the coarse grains basically, and we can be grown on less fertile and sandy soil. It is a hardy crop that needs low rainfall and high to moderate temperature and adequate rainfall. So if you see Jowar, Bajra and Ragi are grown in India. So these are basically known as millet crops. So for these we do not require very high rainfall. Low rainfall is sufficiently enough and moderate temperature. So apart from India, there are some other countries like Nigeria, China and Niger growing these millets. So over here rice cultivation is shown. So you can see that for this rice as discussed, we need water which is staggered, right? And for wheat harvesting, as you see that this is a completely dried up field now ready for harvesting, and harvesting is done using some machines. And this is a bajra crop which is cultivated, also known as millet. So now maize. So maize requires moderate temperature, moderate rainfall, and lots of sunshine. Okay. So it needs well drained fertile soil. So again, the soil should be able to drain out the water. It should not hold up water, and the soil should be fertile. Maize is grown in North America, Brazil, China, Russia, Canada, India, and in some parts of Mexico. So over here are different colors of maize. If you can see, I'll just zoom in. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So if you see, there are different colors of maize. There are black, black plus yellow, sometimes white, and sometimes yellow, right? And there is also some purplish shade. So maize is also known as corn across the globe, and various colorful varieties of maize are found across the world. So in India, basically, we don't find so many varieties, but yeah, we do have these yellowish color maize, right? But it would be good if you see this and even test this maize, right? So now let us move to cotton. So as we have seen that cotton is known as a fiber crop. So cotton requires high temperature, again light rainfall, and 210 frost free days and bright sunshine for its growth, right? So these are the critical parameters. So it requires high temperature, it requires light rainfall and 210 frost free days, that there should not be any dews formation during these days, and it also requires bright sunshine for its growth. So it grows best on black soil and alluvial soil. So soil type is black and alluvial, grown in China, USA, India, Pakistan, Brazil and Egypt. So these are the leading producers of cotton globally. It is one of the main raw material for cotton textile industry. So if you see, this is the primary and most important raw material for textile industry. So next comes is jute. So jute, as we have seen, is also a fiber crop. So jute was known as golden fiber. So jute is also known as golden fiber. Why? Because its color is something like golden, not very like gold, but similar to this. It grows well on alluvial soil and requires high temperature, heavy rainfall and humid climates. So if you see, it requires high temperature and heavy rainfall and humid climate. This crop is grown in tropical areas. India and Bangladesh are leading producers of jute. So globally, India and Bangladesh are the major producers. So coffee. Coffee requires warm and wet climate and well drained loamy soils. So because of the drained soil, they are grown on hill slopes. So hill slopes are more suitable for growth of this crop. Brazil is leading producer, followed by Colombia and India. So over here we are given a coffee plantation field. So you may see like how people are engaged in this activity, right? And over here we have a cotton cultivation. So just imagine if the cotton is grown as shown in the picture, and if there is a sudden rainfall, what will happen? The complete crop would be destroyed, right? So these parameters like 210 days of frost free, so this is a very important parameter, right? mm. So now let us move to the next, that is tea, right? So can you guess where the tea is grown in India? Yeah, it is grown in Assam. Good. So tea is a beverage crop grown on plantations. This requires cool climate and well distributed high rainfall throughout the year. So basically, cool climate and rainfall requirement is throughout the year, right? But that too high rainfall, and the year of growth of its tender leaves throughout the year for the growth. Yeah, so it needs well drained loamy soils. Again, it requires well drained loamy soils. So again, it will be planted somewhere on the slopes possibly, and gentle slopes, right? So labor in large number is required. So if you see for this coffee, as compared to coffee, this tea plantation requires huge labor because it is a selective collection of leaves, right? We don't go and cut all the leaves at a time, but rather there are some periodic patterns during which the leaves are taken out, right? But it is a continuous activity, so labor requirement is large. So this tea plantation is practiced in Kenya, India, China, Sri Lanka, um, and these are also some of the best quality tea producing countries in the world. So we have seen some major crops like rice, wheat, millet, maize, cotton, jute, coffee, tea, right? So after this, now let us move to the agricultural development. So what do you think agricultural development means? So see, if we consider agriculture, this agriculture is been practiced for thousands of years, you can say. So when human being during its shift from you can say early ages, when he started doing agriculture, the techniques would have been much different. It would have been much laborious. It would have been more uh, efforts, but the probability of the crop would have been very less due to less knowledge of various methodologies, techniques, and climatic conditions, right? But now, due to improvement in science and technology, there have been a development of various equipments which are replacing human labor. There is sufficient information on climate, sufficient information on weeds, various insects, how to take care of all these activities. So because of this knowledge in various domains, we can say that there has been great development in agriculture, right? So now let us try to understand this in details. So agricultural development refers to efforts made to increase farm production in order to meet the growing demand of increasing population. So first thing is, why do we need to increase agricultural production? Because as our population is increasing, the demand for agriculture is increasing, and in order to meet this demand, we have to increase agricultural production. So you may say that why don't we increase the arable land, that is bring more land under agriculture, right? But if you see nowadays, due to increasing population, lot of land is required for building shelters. Secondly, we use land for installing various factories or industries. Added to that, we are always cutting down the agricultural land, right? So we are basically reducing the agricultural land, but our population is increasing. So what is happening on the existing land? Now there is a more stress to increase more production, right? If we don't increase the production, then it may happen that we won't produce sufficient for the complete population of India, right? So in order to increase production, there are different techniques which are used. So let's see them. So this can be achieved in many ways, such as increasing the cropped area. We can increase the cropped area wherever possible. The number of crops grown, instead of growing only one crop in a year, we can grow multiple crops. We can take 2 crops, 3 crops as per season and available resources like water or rainfall. Improving irrigation facilities. So the area which is currently not irrigated, so now can be irrigated, and the probability of getting crop can be increased. A use of fertilizers and high yield variety of seeds. So we may use fertilizers to increase the production, and there are some varieties of seed known as high yield variety seeds. So if you see, these seeds are capable of producing a much higher product as compared to the conventional seeds, right? But the drawback of these seeds is that they attract pesticides very quickly, and they require huge fertilizers and huge or plenty water. So these high yield variety seeds can be used only in areas where there is a plenty of agricultural water available, and or else there is a huge rainfall, and natural fertilizers are easily available. But in addition to natural fertilizers, they also demand um, artificial fertilizers, right? So mechanism or mechanization of agriculture is also another aspect of agricultural development. So what it means is that use of various mechanical techniques like use of various machineries are replacing human labor in order to reduce cost and to reduce time, right? So both these factors will play an important role in agricultural development. The ultimate aim of agricultural development is to increase food security, and basically all these things are done in order to have a good or high production, in order to establish food security. So what does food security mean? So food security means that for a given time, in a given area, under given circumstances, also considering some emergencies, that a particular government or particular nation holds sufficient stock so that they are able to supply they are basically they are able to feed the complete population with this stock, right? So that is known as a security stock. So basically, if you recall, during the COVID breakdown, the Indian government has distributed a lot of free food to the whole population, you can say, in general. So just think, if government did not had this security stock, what would have been the condition? because there were a lot of people who were penniless, that is, they had no money. So in such situations, it is responsibility of the government to see to it that all the people of a particular nation, they have sufficient food in case of emergencies. So this stock which is sufficient or which is required, so that all the human population in a particular region have access to food. So this is known as food security. Agriculture has developed a different Agriculture has developed at different places in different parts of the world. Developing countries with large population usually practice intensive agriculture, where crops are grown on small holdings mostly for subsistence. Large holdings are more suitable for commercial agriculture, as in USA, Canada, and Australia. So, if you see across the globe, different types of agriculture has evolved. So, the farmers where there are small lands, basically, if you see, they practice what is known as intensive agricultural farming. So basically what they do, they involve very low capital, the labors are from their family, they grow, and they are not able to sell because the produce is so less that sometimes it is efficient or insufficient for their family itself, right? So there is no question of going and selling in the market. So this type of farming is known as intensive farming, whereas in case of some developed countries like USA, Canada, and Australia, the farmer over there have a huge land, say 100 of acres or 100 of hectares. Mm, so they are able to grow a very high quantum of crops. Some of them might be they keeping for their consumption, but the rest they can sell it in the market. So basically, these are the two differences in developing and in developed countries. So there are basically few reasons which are responsible for this type. Say for example, in India, if you say there is continuous distribution of farms among the families. Say for example, your grandparent had some land, so if he had two children, now the farm in the next generation would be distributed or divided between these two brothers. And say for example, if these two brothers now they individually have two childs, so now again this farm will now be divided into two parts. So if you see, the grandson, he would be getting only 1/8 land what his grandfather owned. So in this way, if you see, there is continuously distribution of farm among various people, and because of this the size of farm is getting continuously reduced in Indian context. But in case of American context, if you see, what I understand is what the people follow is, if there are two children in a family, they ask one child to take care of the complete farm, and they ask other child to look for any of other activities through which he can earn from himself, so that the size of their farm actually doesn't change, right? So because of this, there are now different approaches to the farming, so we will be discussing this. So with the help of two cases studies of farm, one from India and other from the USA, let us understand about agriculture in the developing and developed countries. So now we will be looking at two farmers, one is from India and another is from USA, and how is their approach to agriculture. So a farmer in India, so as you see in this diagram over here, he is farming his land using a plug, using some bullocks, and basically physical intensive or human intensive agriculture, you can say. Also if you observe the area over where he is plugging currently, so this doesn't seems to be a very rainfall intensive area, right? So let us try to understand a farm in India. There is a small village Adilabad in Gazipur district of Uttar Pradesh. So this farmer is from Uttar Pradesh district Gazipur, and his village name is Adilabad. So Munnalal is the name of the farmer, and he lives in a village who has farmland of about 1.5 hectares. So if you see the size of his land, it is 1.5 hectares. His house is in the main village. He purchases high yield variety of seeds from the market every alternate year. So every alternate year for sowing, he has to purchase high yield variety seeds. The land is fertile and he grows at least two crops in a year, which are normally wheat or rice and pulses. So his land is fertile, so he is able to grow at least two crops. So first crop is either of wheat or rice, so he can grow wheat or rice in one season, and in other season he grows any of the pulses, right? So it means that during 1 year cycle he is able to produce two crops. The farmer takes advice of his friends and elders as well as government agricultural officers regarding farming practices. So the source of information for him about which type of crop to take, so he takes advice of his friends and some of the elders. Also sometimes he get information from government agricultural officers. So he takes a tractor on rent for plugging his field, though some of his friends still uses traditional methods or using bullocks for plugging. So if you see, since he has a 1.5 hectares of area, he is using tractor for farming, but some of his farmers may practice plugging by using some bullock carts, that is conventional method as indicated in this figure. So he takes a tractor on rent for plugging his field through some of his friends, though some of his friends still uses traditional method of using bullocks for plugging. There is a tube well in the nearby field which he takes on rent to irrigate his field. Also this Munna Lal, if you see, he takes tube well on rent for irrigating his farm, because there is a tube well in the nearby farm. Munnalal also has two buffaloes and few hens. So, in addition to this farm, he has got two buffaloes and few hens. He sells milk in the cooperative society located in the nearby town. So, whatever milk he gets from these two buffaloes, some he might be consuming, and the rest he will be selling in the nearby town. He is a member of cooperative society, which also advises him on the type of fodder for his animals, safety measures to protect the health of the livestock, and artificial insemination. So if you see, the Munnalal is also a member of a cooperative society where he get advices on the type of fodder for his animals, and also to take some precautionary measures to protect the health of his livestock, you can say. Uh, so in this way, if we see, Munna seems to be a sufficiently good farmer. All the members of his family help in various farm activities. So if you see, Munna Lal's family is involved with him in all the activities. Say for example, in agricultural activity, in animal rearing activity, and so on. Sometimes he take credits from the bank or agricultural cooperative societies to buy HYV seeds and implements. So the major source of funding for this farmer, the Munnalal, is bank. So every time he needs some extra money or needs some capital, so he'll get this from bank or either from agricultural cooperative societies. He sells his produce in mandi. So once the crop is grown, harvested, so he now has to sell them. So he can either sell it in mandi, which is located in the nearby town. Since majority of the farmers do not have or lack storage facilities, they are forced to sell their products even when the market is not favorable to them. So in India, if you see, since the farmland is small, it is very difficult even to maintain the storage facilities. So a lot of farmers, they don't have storage facilities, and what happens, um, if the price for the produce is very less in some seasons, but still due to unavailability of storage facilities, the farmers has to forcefully sell their produce, or else if stored, it won't last, right? Because there are no good storage facilities. So this is the drawback of the Indian farmers, that they are unable to store their farm and are forced to sell during low rates. In the recent year, the government has taken some steps to develop storage facilities, but nowadays government is realizing that yeah, there are some products which needs to be stored um, during their peak period, then that is when they are grown, and then can be sold when there is dearth in the market. So this was the story of an Indian farmer. If you see, now let us try to understand how the farming is done in USA. Okay, So the average size of a farm in the USA is much larger than that of an Indian farm. The typical farm size in the USA is about 250 hectares. Such a huge farm, you can say, if you say. So see, if you see over here, we had a Munalal whose farm size was only 1.5 hectares, and if you see a farmer in USA, his farm is approximately 250 hectares, so it means it is almost approximately equal to 100 or 150 times, right? So in general, if you see, one farmer in USA holds land equal to approximately 150 farmers from India, right? So that is the condition. The farmer generally resides in the farm. So because of such a huge farm, the farmers in USA basically they have their farmhouse, so they resides generally in the farm. Some of the major crops grown are corn, soybean, wheat, cotton, and sugar beet. So these are the major crops. Joe Horan, a farmer in Midwest USA in Iowa state, owns about 300 hectares of land. So there is a farmer known as Joe Horan. So he lives somewhere in the Middle East USA, in the state of Iowa, and he owes about approximately owns about 300 hectares of land, right? So as compared to Munalal, if you compare, this is 200 times more. So it means Joe Horan equals to 200 Munnalals. He grows corn on his field after making sure that soil and water resources meet the needs of the crop. So since Joe Horan has got such a huge farm, there would be a plenty requirement of water for irrigation, right? So before taking any crop, he has to take or he has to do survey of the available water resources, so accordingly he can decide which type of crop to be taken. So adequate measures are taken to control pests that can damage the crop. So in addition to this, he also has to take various measures for controlling the pest growth. From time to time, he sends the soil samples to soil testing laboratory to check whether the nutrients are sufficient or not. So frequently, what this Joe Horan does is he sends the samples of soil to laboratory to check if the nutrients in the soils are sufficient for the growth of crop. If not, additional fertilizers can be added. The result helps Joe Horan to plan a scientific fertilizer program. So with this information, what he can do, he can plan the fertilizer program accordingly. His computer is linked to the satellite, which gives him a precise picture of his field. So if you see this farmer, he uses computer system, he used even satellites to get the picture of his land on his computer. So in general, we can say that US farmers, they are basically using very sophisticated and very high technology, whereas in India we basically see that farmers are not even getting the primary information, right? So this helps, basically if you see the context of the Joe Horan, so he gets this help, or with this information, this helps him to use chemical fertilizers and pesticides wherever they are required. So since this Joe, he is very actively practicing or using modern technology, so he gets very precise information, so that whenever chemical fertilizers or pests are required, he'll use only during those times. He uses tractor, seed drills, levelers, combined harvesters, and threshers to perform various agricultural activities or operations. So if you see, this farmer is completely using modern equipments for his farming, because if he go for human labor, it would be a lot of labor consumption, lot of wages, and a lot of time would be required, right? So in order to reduce capital, in order to reduce the time, to do all the activities within time, he uses modern technology, various mechanical means. Grains are stored in automated grain storage or dispatched to market agencies. So, whatever produce or whatever grains he is producing, he is storing them, either storing them or either selling to the market agencies where he has long term contracts, you can say. The farmer in USA works like a businessman and not like a peasant farmer. So if you see all these, the approach of US farmers towards the agricultural practice is like a businessman. They are doing a business and not like an Indian farmer who is poor guy doing some sort of activities but not gaining anything out of it, right? So this was the major difference between the farming in USA and farming in India. So over here, you if you see properly and if you see deeply, this is an activity of spraying of pests, right? So in India, we do it manually. We do it using some machines, but in USA, if you say either this can be USA, Canada, or Australia, right? So they are spraying the fertilizers with help of aeroplanes. Oh, this is strange, right? So this is an, you can say, a very high degree of technology, because just imagine the speed of aeroplane, how fast it will move over your land. um, if you start spraying, I don't believe that, or I don't think that in India, if you want to spray in your farm, you will ever end up spraying in your farm because of the small size of the farm, right? But in countries where the land is very huge, in say hundreds of hectares, this would be probably the less time consuming technology, right? And most cost effective, rather, you can say. So in this way, we have seen a comparison between a developing and developed nation, where the farming activities is done. Um, so we can conclude 2 to 3 major points. Say for example, in developing countries, a farmer is using conventional technology. He has got very small land, whereas in developed countries, there is a huge land. Farmers are engaged in activities with high technology, huge capital, and they basically look at this farming as commercial business, right? So in one of the lectures, we will also discuss the questions below the text. So presently, I would like to stop this lecture over here. Again, go through the text. If you have any questions, please write down to us in the comments, and we'll be happy to reply and solve all your queries. um, yeah. So if you have not yet subscribed our channel, please do subscribe and do visiting our channel on regular basis to get updates on the new videos. um, Thanks for the day. Thank you.